What is going on, guys? Hey, I wanted to come back to you this afternoon and bring to you a podcast between Dr. Jordan Peterson and Dr. David Buss. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. David Buss is a kind of a pioneer in evolutionary psychology and why men behave the way they behave and why women behave the way they behave and why and what we look for in mates. But anyways, guys, also, if you would like and subscribe to my channel, I've started the channel back in the spring, and I've gotten 103 subscribers so far, and I'd like to get, at least 110 or so by the end of this week. So if you would hit that like button and subscribe, and leave me a comment down below too. But anyways, guys, here's the discussion. All right, guys, the point in the podcast I'm going to start off with is where Dr. David Buss is talking about two groups of people, male and female, that were part of this study, and they were asked several questions. Would they go on a date? Would they go back to somebody's apartment with them? Would they be willing to have sex? And this is what the response is, and the difference between men and women.
So agreed to these three different requests, and of the women, about half, about a little over 50% agreed to go out on a date with the guy. 6% agreed to go back to his apartment. 0% agreed to have sex with him. Most women need a little more information about the guy before they're willing to have sex. Of the men approach, also about 50, by the female confederate, about 50% agreed to go out on the date, 69% agreed to go back to her apartment, and 75% agreed to have sex with her. And so if you talk about choosiness, are you willing to have sex with a total stranger who you've met for 30 seconds? Women unwilling to, and in general. Men very willing to. And this is a study that's been replicated now in several European studies. Very difficult to do this, as you might imagine, to get this by the IRBs or ethics committees in the United States anyway. I assume it's similar in Canada.
Or worse.
Or worse. So, but the kinds of studies we really want to do are more difficult to do nowadays. But it's been replicated in several Western European countries. And you can get women off of the 0%. You can get a few percent of the women saying yes if the guy's really, really charming. If he's Brad Pitt or I don't know what the modern equivalent is, Ryan
Gosling, really rich,
one of the, or perhaps a famous rock star. But that's one illustration of the answer to your question about, well, what is the evidence for female choosiness? The interesting thing, I'll give you one more. So there are studies that ask, what is the minimum percentile of intelligence that you would accept in a potential partner? So
this right here is going to be interesting because, I would think that men are much less choosy as far as intelligence than women are. It's like, but again, you're gonna see what it says here in a minute. But yeah, I definitely believe that men are quite less choosy when it comes to intelligence.
And we explain percentiles to people so they understand 99th percentile, first percentile, 50th, and so forth. And basically for things like a marriage partner, men and women are roughly equal. They both are very exact. They say what they want, like say 65th to 70th percentile in intelligence. Where the sex difference comes up is just a sex partner, a pure sex partner with no investment. Women still maintain, they still want, let's say, a 60th or 60 plus percentile in intelligence, whereas men drop, to embarrassing levels.
I wonder how much, how many women that when they have sex that they're looking for something longer term than just sex, and maybe that's the reason why it stays at that level, because I'm wondering if just how intelligent a man has to be if she just wants to have sex with him. But then again, they also just showed that women are less likely to have sex quickly than men are. Men are more likely to want to bang whatever, and women are much less likely to be willing to take off and bang somebody and be done with it. So I'm just wondering what the percentage of women actually feel that it would just be for sex and nothing else. I think they're wanting something more longer term.
It doesn't really, it becomes irrelevant. The 35th, 40th percentile then go, if she can mumble a little bit, that's fine, or even not. So that's
or even not.
Of female choosiness.
Yeah, even not. I mean, I think a lot of guys out there would just please be quiet. It's like, yeah.
As they maintain greater choosiness when it comes to short-term sex, and are simply less comfortable with having sex with total strangers or casual sex. And I'll give you one more now that I'm rambling on, and then I'll get to some other interesting issues. This is an item on the sociosexuality inventory that colleagues Steve Gangstead and Jeff Simpson developed a long time ago. But one of the items is, as an attitude item, and it says, sex without love is okay. Do you agree with that or disagree with that? And there you get a large sex difference. So in the 7-point scale, where 4 is the midpoint, men average about 5.5. So they say, sex without love, that's okay.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's the thing. I think men are much more willing to entertain the idea of something being just sex and nothing else. And again, I think that goes along kind of what Dr. Buss and Dr. Peterson both talk about quite a bit, is that, men are more looking to, from an evolutionary standpoint, of spreading their seed, far and wide as much as they can. And women are looking more like, who can take care of me and the family and offspring? Who's going to be there? Versus, who's not going to be. Right here, they're talking about the dark triad, and women, younger women, tend to be more attracted to males that have that propensity of being. They're more likely to be, that dark triad, the Machiavellism and psychopathy and narcissism, all kind of put together. They younger women tend to be attracted to that, and we understand that to a degree because young men that are like that, younger guys normally younger guys that are like this, they tend to be very, they come across as kind of alpha, as very, and they're able to fool younger women in a lot of ways, because of this. But I want to put up what he has to say on this.
Market tend to be less attracted to these dark triad characters.
Okay, so here's a hypothesis. It's not that easy to distinguish the willingness to use casual power and control from competence when you're not very experienced. And so the dark triad types can feign status-related competence, and they can ensnare naive women.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And they also have some qualities that women genuinely do desire. So they tend to, like the narcissists, tend to put themselves at the center of attention. And one of the things we know about status hierarchies is that the attention structure is very important. That is, the high status people tend to be those to whom the most people pay the most attention.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed a lot in my own life is that guys that tend to be the center of attention tend to get the girls. And, because we understand that there is something desirable about, we look at people that get the most attention as being important, as being able to offer something, whether it's they're competent at, building something or communication, or a combination of, they're good at what they do and they're good at communication, but we tend to want to give attention to people who are the center of attention, and they're kind of getting to this here.
And so women are drawn. I one anecdote, a female colleague of mine, very intelligent evolutionary psychologist, went to a conference and found herself very attracted to the organizer of the conference. And then 6 months later, she encountered him, and he was just a normal attendee at the conference, and she didn't find him very attractive. She wondered, what was I thinking? But what it was is he was at the center of the attention structure.
Well, the attention structure is an unbelievably reliable indicator of what's valuable, because we don't devote our visual attentive resources to anything that isn't of singular value in the environment. And so that's why precisely why we compete for attention. Now, it's also an extremely valuable resource.
Absolutely. So, a valuable and limited resource. It's finite. And so really at every moment in time, we're making decisions about what to allocate our attention to.
I read a funny study once, you might be aware of this, where monkeys, I think they were green monkeys, but I'm not sure, were shown photographs of other members of their troop, and they gazed much longer at the high status individuals in the photographs.
Yeah.
So, and then you think about that too, there's something really interesting about that, because imagine that compulsion to attend to what acquired status, or let's say competent status, is accompanied in human beings by a profound instinct to imitate.
And right here, they're talking about competence hierarchies or dominance hierarchies, and they're talking that we tend to build up or lift up those around us who are the best at what they do. Not as a way of trying to rule the world. We're not building people up because of trying to fame people, and that talks against this idea of equity. We tend to build up those around us who are the most competent at what they do, and instead of building up people because they're males, or because they're white, or because they're whatever. And I'm gonna play a little bit here what he has to say, but it's like, I got a good chuckle out of this, especially when it came to the way they kind of broke down certain aspects of what you would call the patriarchy.
It's inherently a relative, gauged by a relative metric, so if you're the number one, no one else can be the number one. But if you can be the best scholar, the best writer, the best World of Warcraft player, the best tennis player, these multiple status hierarchies give more people the opportunity to gain status.
So it's another argument against the patriarchy as a unitary idea, right? Well, which patriarchy do you mean? Do you mean like the evil coalition of plumbers, which is a joke I've made before? It's like, that's power, is it? Plumbers, really? No, they're not organized in terms of their success by which plumber is the meanest and the toughest. That's not how it works at all.
Right. So no, yeah, absolutely, and that gets into the issue of there are large pools of men who are at the bottom of the status hierarchy, and who don't have the qualities that women desire, and so are they really oppressing women? There's this interesting there's an interesting photo that I think got captioned, but it's two very elegant women with designer handbags, and they're walking by a guy who's like fixing the tar in the street. He's a street worker fixing the tar, and as they walk by this guy who's groveling on the ground, they say, "Stop oppressing me."
Right.
So anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's it right there. It's like, and I think we can understand why a lot of this is just plain ass bullshit. I mean, it's like, again, we're and I've talked about it before, even we talked about race, this idea of white privilege and everything else. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like, so that homeless guy over there, he has got privilege over you, a doctor, a black man with a PhD, because he's white, he's homeless, living in the street and on drugs, but yet he's got some kind of advantage over you. He's looked at more seriously because he's white, or the cops don't look at him as, it's like he's wearing dirty clothes, torn up, his hair's all messed up. It's like, I get, and you're wearing a polo shirt or hair slacks or whatever, just because of your dark skin does not mean anyone's going to look at you differently. I mean, you would much more look at that white guy, with the homeless white guy with the bad clothes and messed up hair and everything else. You can tell the guy's a threat. It's like me, when I've been out, going around or whatever, it's like no one gives a black man a second look who's wearing a polo shirt and a pair of slacks. It's like, are you worried about that guy robbing the store? Well, of course not. It's like, so there's more to it than, but yeah, this idea that man, working, retard on the road or whatever, is oppressing these two rich women or whatever with designer handbags. It's like, she might have more money one of these women might have more money in their purse than he is in the bank. So, yeah, please, don't get me started with that stuff. Right here, Dr. Peterson is talking about the way the women use makeup to make themselves more attractive and to make themselves look kind of healthier, more desirable, more ripe for the picking. And, and he talks about how fruit is like that. Like, we understand by looking at fruit a certain way that, that fruit over there is ripe. There's we understand fruit is ripe if it's red and it's juicy looking, and it's, there's something about putting red lipstick on your lips and, and making your cheeks red and everything else. And we understand that, you're kind of ripe for the picking. You're kind of, and women like to do that. They like to do that with push-up bras and everything else, and, make themselves look more firm, more ripe for the picking type thing. But I'm going to let him talk about this.
You wouldn't believe the flack I got for that. And I said, well, the reddening of the lips, for example, and the rouging of the cheeks is not only a signal to mimic youth and fertility, but it's likely associated with mimicry of ripe fruit, because our visual system evolved to detect ripe fruit. And if you look through any advertising, like any magazine, women's magazines in particular, the association between makeup and fruit is there in the imagery all the time. So, and the flavor as well, for that matter. So Did I say something that I shouldn't have said? Am I wrong about that in some important way?
No, you're not wrong about it, but I know what you mean. I've got some flack for that as well. And one thing that, on this finding that men prioritize physical attractiveness, and that physical attractiveness is not just this arbitrary social construction, but in fact, underlying it is a set of cues to youth and cues to health and hence cues to fertility. This is a very upsetting notion to some people. And so I was actually, even before I published 37 Culture Study, I gave a talk on it to a sociology department when I was at Michigan. And a female professor came up to me afterwards and said that I shouldn't publish the findings. And I said, well, why not? Because to me, empirical findings are empirical findings, but she said that women had it hard enough without in competing with each other on physical appearance without being told that men
we all have a hard
preference for it, and so the standard social science model is more comfortable for people to believe, oh, it's just arbitrary and infinitely changeable, and you go to any different culture and they value a whole different set of things. And the notion that we have evolved preferences for fertility cues is anathema to some people.
Well, but you can understand it to some degree because a lot of the truths that psychologists have stumbled over, let's say, are actually quite painful. I mean, I reviewed the IQ literature for about 20 years trying to get to the bottom of it, and it's very distressing to realize how wide the human differential is in cognitive ability. It's really quite a staggering thing to understand how broad that gap is and how much pain that causes, especially at the lower end of the distribution. And the fact that men are stringently selected for, let's say, the capacity to acquire position in a competence hierarchy, and women are brutally punished in terms of their sexual attractiveness for not manifesting signs of fertility and youth. It's like there's a real harshness to that, but it's the harshness, I think it's the harshness of life. And actually understanding that makes it less harsh insofar as understanding is useful.
I'm going to cut the video here, but yeah, I mean, it's like we have just got to be honest, just like the one professor that he was talking about, she said that women have had hard enough. We've all had hard enough. All of us have had hard. All of us, men, women, white people, black people, Asian people, we've all had it rough. All of us. There's been, there's all kinds of selection when it comes to mating. And there are things that men find attractive. There are things that women find attractive. And we've got to be honest about that fact. It's like, again, I'm not saying that people should love you or people shouldn't be attracted to you. I mean, there are people for other people out there. But should Brad Pitt be attracted to Lizzo? It's like, and I understand that, again, I'm older than a lot of people, so I don't really know who, like Dr. Buss said, who's the modern equivalent to Brad Pitt. I don't know. But, it's like, what I'm saying is that for the most part, Lizzo, or someone that looks like Lizzo, if you're not rich and you're not famous and whatever, it's not going to get the guy that, has a 6 foot tall with 6-pack abs and everything else. It's not, she's not going to get that guy. And we've got to be honest about the fact, not that she's not entitled to love or she shouldn't be allowed to, if somebody is attracted to her, but she's not going to get grade A guys. It's kind of like we all know that a supermodel lady in a Playboy magazine is not gonna date some 40-year-old guy living in his mom's basement that weighs 400 pounds. It's not going to happen. I mean, and we understand it, and we actually would say if she is doing that, there's something wrong. And there's something wrong with her. And as a matter of fact, why would a guy be so entitled to believe that he should be with somebody like that if he's 400 pounds living in a smallest basement? But the other way around, we don't seem to understand that. We don't seem to get that a 400-pound woman, a 6 foot tall, 6-pack ab guy, would not be attracted to that 400-pound woman, and we want to pretend there's something wrong with the guy. There's nothing wrong with the guy. He doesn't want that. And neither do a lot of you girls that are out there. You don't want that. You don't want a 400-pound guy who lives in his mom's basement playing World of Warcraft or whatever video games they play now. You don't want that. So, it's like, come on, let's get real with things. Let's get honest with things. Let's get to the point to where we understand that there are people that the patriarchy or whatever bullshit you want to put it up there as running the world. It's like, no. Men try to make themselves more desirable to women. And men are competing with other men. They're not competing with the women. They're not. I'm sorry. They're not competing with women. They're trying to get women, not compete with them. Men are competing with other men. They're not competing with women. We've got to understand that. We've got to be honest about the fact, because guys, girls, it is a fact. Men don't compete with women. Not on a large scale. I mean, sure, one man and one woman might be competing for the same job. So yeah, that might happen. But for the most part, men are competing with women. Men are competing with other men for the attention of women. But anyways, guys, if you would, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.
You son of a